أصحاب المعالي والسعادة.
In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, peace be upon you all. We welcome you all to this event that witnesses the launch of a landmark event, which is a unique event in the area, bringing together experts and the elite of speakers in the industry of knowledge from all over the world in order to shed light on the humanity's journey and communities with knowledge, giving solutions and the best practices with regards to knowledge. So welcome to the Knowledge Summit 2019. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, for the first day of the Knowledge Summit of 2019. We will start the sessions with a session called Space and Sustainability. We have the speakers, His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Nasser Al-Ahbabi, Director General UAE Space Agency, Simtu D. Tipo, Director United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs, and Anna Haley, CEO of Radiant Earth Foundation, and moderated by Ramia Faraj, presenter and news bullet editor, DMI.
I think we'll begin with Anne's presentation, since that's the first presentation that's available. Would you please put up Anne's presentation once again? After the presentations, we're going to have a panel discussion. It should be interesting. We're going to hear all about the UAE's space mission.
Right, it's there. Now
Yeah, and here we go.
Here, okay. Good morning. It's an honor to be here with you today. I just want to share with you some of the activities that I see going on in the global development community, and as it relates to space and Earth observations. I run the Radiant Earth Foundation, an organization that I funded about 5 years ago with funding from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Pierre Omidyar of the Omidyar Network. I have, however, been a remote sensing scientist for more than 30 years. And I can tell you, I have never been so energetic or so hopeful about the future and what we can now do with Earth observations. There is an explosion of Earth observation satellites, which, as we'll talk about later, has its challenges as well. But when I was growing up and in college, there was really only one Earth observation satellite. It was Landsat. It was launched in the early 70s. Now, these are some statistics that I track. I have quit trying to update this graphic. There are over 600 Earth observation satellites on orbit today. Probably that number is closer to 700. And when you intersect that with data from aircraft, as well as data from drones, we are awash in imagery. That used to present its challenges as well, because simply that amount of data is so difficult to manage. But now you intersect that with cloud computing and machine learning and the Internet of Things and blockchain. I think we're in line to develop new solutions for humanity. In addition to having more satellites on orbit, their temporal resolution has picked up dramatically. It used to be that we would get a Landsat image every 16 days, but now we're imaging the Earth every day. Every inch of the Earth is imaged every day, and in particular by one company called Planet. This is a slide that I put together and I keep current on commercial space and the investments in commercial space. These are commercial companies, commercial space operators. The ones that have red around them have launched in the last year. So you can see how much activity there is here. And I would also say that while this trend started primarily in the US about 6 years ago, that is no longer the case. This is a global commercial effort with companies from all over the world launching. These are radar satellites that are particularly valuable in the tropics, where we traditional electro-optical satellites struggle through clouds, but we see the same commercial explosion in Earth observation there. And then finally, an area where I used to be the CEO of Planet IQ, in commercial weather. There have never been commercial weather satellites on orbit until the last 3 years, and you can see there's a real explosion there. But what is so exciting to me, to the point where I recently changed the entire direction of the Radiant Earth Foundation, is what we can do with machine learning on Earth observations. I would argue that we are in the very, very early stages of applying machine learning and artificial intelligence to Earth observations, but I would also argue that it will present us with dramatic results. This is an example from Digital Globe Corporation that is doing a tremendous amount of work for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to map every structure in Africa. This is a machine learning application. It was done in less than a week for all of Mozambique, and this is being delivered for the entire continent. It is used in the Bill and Melinda Gates census analysis, as well as in their polio and malaria programs, to identify where vaccine is needed most. This is a project that my team did for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, where we were looking to monitor the operation of waste treatment facilities. The foundation pays for the operation of waste treatment facilities around the globe, but there's no independent source on how much waste is actually being treated. We've monitored these facilities using the Sentinel-1 and Sentinel-2 data of the European Space Agency, and have been able to correlate the actual bills, if you will, from the individual facilities with what we're seeing from space. Finally, a fascinating application, which is actually not from space, but I love it so much I thought I'd include it. And this is a drone application. This application was done by the World Bank. It's to identify structures that may collapse in an earthquake. The World Bank flew a large portion of a Mexican city here, intersected that with laser imagery as well, drone imagery, street imagery, and through some machine learning ended up, at the first time through, an 89% accurate estimate of building soft structures that would collapse in an earthquake without ever putting an engineer in the field, dramatically improving their mitigation time. So what do we lack in implementing this? We lack training data, and we particularly lack training data in the Global South. And that's my mission. That's why I accepted this great invitation to come here, is to talk to you about what we can do collaboratively to increase training data in the Global South. We are at the foundation next month releasing 2 very large data sets, and all of the data that we release is free and open, whether you're an academic or a government organization or a nonprofit or a commercial entity. We're releasing data sets on land cover globally tied to the Sentinel-2 instrument, and we're also releasing data on the crops of Africa. Now that is just the beginning. This is a long, long journey that we're on, but we invite you to join us in registering the data that you may have so that your own communities can take advantage. I think with that, we have seen so much progress over the last 4 or 5 years. Some old problems, however, still persist in this field, and that is connectivity and internet connectivity, particularly in the Global South. Collaboration and data sharing. Well, I know open data and open government and open knowledge is often talked about, but many times data are not truly open because they cannot be made accessible. And so I think we as a global society really need to work on that. The biggest issue, and one that perhaps this forum is also focused on, is capacity development and developing professionals all over the globe to help us solve these serious problems. There are new problems emerging Those are privacy and ethics and geolocation and machine learning. There are issues, as we will talk about, I believe, in our panel discussion around how space is getting very, very crowded, and the accuracy of machine learning and artificial intelligence. So with that, thank you.
Thanks very much, Ms. Miglaris. And I'd like to invite now to the stage Ms. DePippo from the United Nations for her presentation, please. Second time's a charm.
So, good morning again. It's really a great pleasure for me to be here and to represent the United Nations in this important panel. I would like also to thank the organizers, because we once again have today the possibility and an opportunity in a way to spread the word on the importance of space for sustainable development. Working? Not working? Okay, so we are quickly approaching 2020. Well, if we look back, we see a decade of major changes in transformations in politics and economy, in sports and culture, in science and technology. Well, it was quite a turbulent decade, full of ups and downs, a moment of hope, but also moments of despair. We have experienced conflicts and migration crises, forcing millions to leave their homes and even their countries. We face the consequences of one of the biggest financial crises that have shaped the global economy, and the world's population surpassed 7 billion for the first time in history and is still growing. And we have encountered devastating natural disasters and registered the increase of CO2 concentrations to a level not seen in 3 million years. But there is also a lot to commemorate. We are going to celebrate, by the way, the 75th years of the United Nations and the UN Charter next year, so we celebrated the 7th anniversary during the last decade. We have seen pledges of the world leaders for a peaceful, just, and more prosperous future, and the international community has adopted global frameworks, including the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Paris COP21 Climate Change Agreement. And there were also major breakthroughs in science and technology. Let me highlight some of them relevant to the field of space. We discovered the evidence of water on Mars, processed the first ever image of a black hole, and discovered hundreds of exoplanets, some of which are great candidates in the search for life. Sorry, too quick. And while these are the news, they usually make the headlines, there is so much in the space field that remain often under the radar. Space has played a role in many of the events that have shaped not only the last 10 years, but the last 60 years of humanity. And after 6 decades of relentless progress, it has become clear that through its intrinsic disruptive nature, space is a game changer. And today, access to space science, technologies, data, applications, and services is not anymore a luxury available only to a small group of wealthy nations. The investment of political, financial, and human capital are growing worldwide, and so is the overall value of the space industry. Established space actors, seconded by startups, new government entities, universities and research institutes, commercial sector, and even NGOs are causing an unprecedented boom in space activities. This is the evidence that the promise of space for the society is becoming more widely recognized. And it is now more and more obvious that to succeed in addressing global challenges facing our planet, space must be part of the solution. And its importance for the 17 Sustainable Development Goals is a prime example. In a recent study, we found that almost 40% of the 169 targets that are underpinning the 17 Sustainable Development Goals are reliant on the use of space. And in fact, the study only included positioning, timing, and navigation, coupled with Earth observation, and it is safe to assume that the number would be even higher with the introduction of telecommunication. Space has truly become an indispensable tool for the modern society. Without the use of space infrastructure, the likelihood for the member states to achieve the SDGs would be very limited, if not impossible. As a great example, space assets are key to addressing climate change. Utilizing space significantly improves our knowledge of the natural phenomena and our capability, let me see if that's the right one, yes, sorry, improves our knowledge of the natural phenomena and our capability to monitor changes to weather, the environment, and climate around the world. And more than half of the essential climate variables are dependent on space infrastructure. The amount of data produced by Earth observation today is bigger than ever, as was said already. They provide a more accurate and holistic view of our planet and are triggering new applications and services, part of a flourishing market, also fueling artificial intelligence algorithms that can handle such vast amount of data. The United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs is embarked in a data project called Open Universe, rendering accessible and reducing the entry level for space science and astronomy data. However, in this data-driven knowledge society, we are paying less attention to maintaining data archives, and as was said already. So I'm happy that, we are one after the other. So think about this. While patents have an expiration date and then they become open, this does not apply to data because really all data have a scientific value. And also, if we think about what was discovered, for example, the water on Mars, it was only possible because all data were reanalyzed with modern data processing procedures and techniques. And so, closed knowledge should have an expiration date, in a way. And what is true for space science data is also true for Earth observation data. And moreover, keeping the data closed increases the risk of losing the data set forever if something happens. So, space is also crucial for managing disasters in all their phases. And remote sensing data enable modeling and weather forecasting, which help predict disasters, a prerequisite for early warnings. Satellites also offer a reliable tool for communication, while space imagery and positioning become vital for relief and recovery, helping for assessing damage, facilitate first aid delivery, or locate those in need. And the list of benefits goes on and on. And at the time when climate change is rendering disasters more frequent and severe, when we see record temperatures and heat waves, island states losing their territory and biodiversity is being under great risk, we need to make use of all available assets to alleviate the suffering of billions and to stop the destruction of the environment and the planet. Despite the great success in expanding accessibility space, we are still facing, accessibility in space, we are still facing, and in some cases even widening the gap in technological capabilities among nations. And while the number of countries who have managed to operate at least one satellite has doubled since 2000, it is not even a half of the 193 member states of the United Nations. Clearly, we have a long way to go in ensuring that benefits the space activities can offer are made available to everyone, everywhere. And as part of its efforts to contribute to sustainable development, we, the Office for Outer Space Affairs, create opportunities to increase access to outer space. Our dedicated capacity building activities have already reached more than 24,000 people since the 1970s, and we are constantly innovating our approach to ensure that it is fit for purpose. It is now, when humanity faces the defining challenges of our time, that we need to step up our effort. And as part of our novel, modern, and holistic approach to meet the needs of the 21st century capacity building, UNUSA launched the Access to Space for All initiative in 2018. And through triangular cooperation, the Office works together with established space actors to support known and emerging spacefaring nations to enable individuals and teams acquire practical skills through the ultimate layer of capacity building, which is hands-on experience. Access to Space for All encompasses a range of activities which correspond to the full cycle of accessing space, from research on the ground to satellite development and deployment, to orbital activities and access to the International Space Station and the China Space Station for educational and research purposes. Overall, the long history of productive multilateral collaboration at the UN in the space sector is a great example of what the international community can achieve with robust institutional support, political will, and a common goal. The real-life contribution space is making to our daily life is undeniable, and it is in the best interest of all to expand opportunities to enable access to space. And through the Access to Space for All, we are committed to make this happen. Expanding the space community is a noble goal as space truly transforms societies. However, we cannot neglect responsible behavior. Unregulated proliferation of space objects would bring significant challenges to space operations. As we see more and more actors entering the sector and plans to launch thousands of satellites in mega constellations, the very sustainability of other space activities is at risk. In the worst-case scenario, collisions of objects in space could render the immediate Earth surrounding unusable for decades. At the United Nations, we therefore assign great importance to responsible conduct in the Earth orbit and beyond. The international community realizes the challenges that lie ahead and is already taking steps to address them. In June 2019, the member states of the UN Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space adopted the preamble and the 21 guidelines for the long-term sustainability of outer space activities. And over a decade ago, the space debris mitigation guidelines were adopted to help mitigate the issue of the growing population of orbital waste. These guidelines, despite their non-binding character, represent great results of multilateral, years-long efforts and the consensus of nations on the urgency of these matters. UNUSA, in its role as the Secretariat of the Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space and the dedicated working groups, have supported the deliberations and played a key role in the process. To ensure that emerging and non-spacefaring nations conduct activities in orbit in a manner that is consistent with the responsible use of space for peaceful purposes, we have launched a dedicated project called Space Law for New Space Actors, starting with the great support of the government of Luxembourg. Through such efforts, we contribute to raising global adherence to and awareness of the existing instrument on outer space. With space being a global common and the province of all humankind, supporting new actors to comply with provisions of the international space law, to which the Outer Space Treaty is the foundation document, ultimately benefits the whole community. Well, to conclude, the future in space is indeed promising. Economic development, mitigating impacts of climate change, saving lives and property in case of disasters, or achieving connectivity in all corners of the globe. These are but few examples of what we can achieve through space. To enjoy these benefits, a safe, secure, and sustainable space environment is required now and in the future. And I'm honored that I had the opportunity to share these insights with you today. And let me conclude with a famous quote from one of the brightest minds of all time, Isaac Newton, who once said, "If I have seen further, it is by standing upon the shoulders of giants." We are now heavily benefiting from the work of those who came before us, and now let's together harness the power of knowledge and space to change the world. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Ms. DePipo. Allow me now to welcome to the stage His Excellency Dr. Al-Ahbabi, Director General of the UAE Space Agency.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
In the name of God, most gracious, most compassionate, peace be upon you all, and good morning.
I'd like to thank the organizer for providing me this opportunity to share with you the story of UAE in space. I have few slides just to talk about why UAE is interested in space. So there is no difference than other countries. UAE has identified space as part of its current and future, and this is why UAE has been invested in space in the last 20 years. But the big question still remains: why space? Well, I can, assure that space, there is race to space, and by very simple comparison, 50 years ago there were two countries, the US and the former USSR. Today we have more than 60, probably 65 to 70 countries. They have space activities. But for different countries, there's a different interest. So space can be, justified for national interest. Space provides great capability. In fact, it's a dual usage. Space also can be, the interest for space can be for scientific, to advance scientific, to elevate the community and the society. Also, space can be a contributor to knowledge-based economy. Countries today, they have no, they own some space capabilities. For example, a good example, I think, if you agree, Your Excellency, with me, it's Luxembourg. Luxembourg has SES as a company that has more than 60 satellites that are providing and contributing to their economy. So it's not for military or for pure scientific, but again for economy. It's also for social, as we learned today that space provides great opportunities for us as people. The communication that we are using is part of it is related to space. Navigation, when we fly in the nights, airplanes find their way through navigation, through satellites. Communications, remote sensing, weather prediction, all come from space. A lot of technologies that we are using today was designed for space. Spinned off to what we use today. A good example, it's the phone that we are using. The integrated camera in our mobile phones was designed for space, but it was found that it can be used in other products, and you can guess on scale it, in other area, in medical and science. Space is also a tool for inspiring. Also, it's a great platform for innovation because still there's a lot unknown in space, so the minds can search. And also, it's a good model for cooperation. Countries might have some differences on Earth, but they cooperate. A good example, again, it's the United States of America and Russia. Probably they might difference geopolitics, but they work together. American astronauts fly from Russia to space. So, looking to the landscape of UAE space program, we have the first space agency. Our space agency was founded in 2013 as the first space agency in the region. We have 3 operators that operate satellites. UAE operating on 10 satellites in orbit, different from communication to remote sensing, and also now coming science. We have 8 satellites in projects, which means they will be launched in the next few years. Some of these satellites are contributing to climate change, observing Earth, so it might improve our understanding of the environment issues, and this is again contributing to the sustainability development on Earth. We have been investing, UAE invested more than around 20 billion dirhams, around $6 billion in space activities in the last 20 years. We have 3 universities are providing space educations. We have 5 space research centers attached to our universities. So we are building a society empowered by knowledge, using space as a tool to inspire and to educate. We have the Mars mission. It's a big story. Next year, UAE will launch the first scientific mission going to Mars. And I will have a few words. Another project is the Mars 2117. UAE has set a bold vision that it will be a contributor in the humanity's efforts to expand space exploration by 100 years. So UAE is committed to be part of an initiative that humanity will put the first human on Mars by 2117. It's a long-term project, but it has a vision, which means that we are focused to build, the capability, the capacity, and the knowledge in line with this project. Astronaut program, UAE sent the first Emirati astronaut, Hazza Al-Mansouri. He came last month, and he's inspiring and also providing confidence to our people and our young people that it's possible to go from desert to space. We have 1,500 people are working in our space sector. Women well represented. Yesterday we have an event organized by UAE Space Agency about women in space. It was reported that in my organization, the UAE Space Agency, we have 45% are women, and they are not just, they are in the core business in the space doing great science and technology work. We have around 50 companies that working in our space sector, which is a good sign that we are moving to space economy. Also, we have a lot of activities in terms of astronomy. A few words on our space agency. This was established in 2014, mandated by the government to put the right regulation and also to invest in people building capacity, and also to support research and development, and also to be responsible for international cooperation, and also to oversight and fund the Mars mission. We have a team of 50 people. I call them the dream team. We have a board, and also we have advisory committee board, which means international experts. They are helping us to put the long-term strategy. In terms of regulation, we have recently completed our sector regulation. We are lucky because we started in 2014 new without heritage. This gave us an opportunity to design our regulatory framework to be the regulatory framework for tomorrow, not yesterday. So we don't have a heritage 30 or 40 years ago that we cannot change. So we issued the National Space Policy. It's a document clarify why UAE is interested in space. This year, the government approved the National Space Strategy, which is a roadmap for the next 10 years, what we need to do. And also the space law. Space law is very important that we need a regulation for investment and to also protect our local operators. We are also active in terms of United Nations, and Her Excellency, I think, agree with me that the UAE is an active participant when it comes to international space guidelines and regulations. We signed 4 treaties. We are a member of different organizations, and also we work closely with Her Excellency and her team to further support the good work that they are doing. Internationally, we are very active again because we think and we believe that space is all about cooperation. As a young nation, we are hungry for knowledge and for technology, so we cooperate almost with everyone. More than 28 cooperation agreements, and we are also, yesterday we are hosting Russian Space Agency, and the head of Russia Space Agency came, and also the French Space Agency. And we are actually organizing different events, and there's great, presence of the international space communities. Not only after signing, but also we are activating projects. Today we have a current space project with Russia, with the US, with Japan, and also with France, and we are expanding this to secure more knowledge, networking, and engagement. Education, again, we are doing a lot of activities. We do believe that the core of our space program in the future is capacity, and we are doing a lot in cooperation with the educational institutions and ministries, in trying to inspire and to train and educate the young Emirati to come and join the space sector and be part of the successful story. Not only focusing on UAE, UAE is also expanding its space capability and knowledge to our region. We do believe that we have a moral obligations. So this year, UAE leadership announced that UAE will establish what we call Arab Space Cooperation. 11 countries came together, leading by UAE, forming what we call the Arab Space Cooperation Group, which is we're expanding, the space activities to the region. UAE not just only establishing this organization, but providing a satellite. UAE will fund a satellite for the Arab region. That satellite will help to fight climate change and also will localize, natural resources and also try to get, more information on environment challenges. The satellite will be built here in UAE and also will be a platform where we will bring some Arab experts to help us to build, the satellite. It's a platform to engage the Arab community and the scientists and engineers and to provide a culture of cooperation. Mars mission will be launched next year in July 14th. Will be launched from Japan. It's a scientific mission that will go to Mars, and it's named the Hope. Hope means Al-Amal بالعربي, and of course it's named by His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid. And the idea of this project is to inspire the young UAE, but also the Arab youth that for a better tomorrow. We are also using this platform. Sorry about this because it's automated. We are using this platform for knowledge. We are engaging with international space communities, with countries to acquire knowledge and to engage and to learn. And our engineers is more than 200 engineers and scientists, young scientists from UAE working on this project. This project on time, it will take 7 months after launch to reach Mars. It will orbit Mars and collect some data, and that data will be sent back to Earth, will be shared with the international institutions and universities. The astronaut program, I think you are aware that Hazza was the first Emirati, and his colleague Sultan was a backup. 4,000 people applied to this program when we opened the application process. 1/3 of the applicants are women, and Hazza flew to space on the 25th of September for a short duration. Mission was a scientific mission. He did 16 experiments, scientific experiments. I can assure you this is a sustainable program. It's not just only a visit, but it's a sustainable and driven by science. I think this is conclude my overview. I hope I gave you a short summary of UAE Space Program, and I will be more than happy to participate. Thank you. So we sit here.
Can I invite our panelists to approach the stage, please? Thank you so much. We can open the floor to questions. I'm sure there are some questions from the audience. If you have a question, please just stand up and we'll pass the mic to you. Well, I know that I certainly have a question, and my first question is for His Excellency. Now, we all watched as Hazza al-Mansouri traveled to the ISS this year. It was a source of pride for everyone in the UAE and in the international community. Why was it important to send an Emirati to space, Your Excellency?
Well, actually, when the program started, it was started with different goals that we have a comprehensive space activities. We have satellites and communication, remote sensing. We have a science mission to Mars. We have also a lot of space activities internationally, but also regulatory. So in order to have a comprehensive space program, human space flight is a key. And the idea behind an astronaut, not just only in UAE, but around the world, is to inspire. inspire the young people. When astronaut walk in a school or a university, a lot of people, around him, especially young people. So countries, not just only us, but other countries are using astronauts to inspire the young people to go to STEM education. Now, regardless where they go later, but they're hooked by astronauts in order to pursue STEM education. UAE is aligned with this goal. So Hazza Al-Mansouri today, yes, he went to space, but today his big job is to go out and talk to the young people, try to elevate their expectation, try to encourage them to think big and aim high.
It certainly was a source of inspiration for people throughout the UAE. Hazza Al-Mansouri is now he's a local celebrity, isn't he? Now, Ms. Miglariz, you mentioned in your presentation open societies. What are your greatest concerns with regard to the use of Earth observation to support an open society?
Well, I think as you've heard, there's a tremendous amount of private capital going into Earth observations, which I think is wonderful. I've run several commercial Earth observation companies. But what I don't see equally across the globe is the investment in capacity development and the investment in truly making data open. Now, with that said, I would take my hat off to the European Union and their work with the Copernicus program is really quite tremendous. I believe that they're really now leading the way as it relates to Earth observations and open data. But we're also seeing a tremendous amount of activity, particularly out of China, and a recent announcement that they're going to open some of their data as well. So making data truly discoverable and accessible is key, and seeing capacity development programs across the globe so that people can get access to that for their own solution development, I think are the most important activities.
Now, Ms. DePippa, you did mention promoting peaceful uses of outer space. What does this mean to the average person, and how is the UN office actually promoting peaceful uses of outer space?
Well, it's quite, let's say, an articulated environment. On one side, we have member states, so the Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, which is made now by 95 members, and the overall General Assembly, which means the 193 member states. Now, one important point which gives you a certain angle on this, I took up duty as director of the office a little bit more than 5 years ago, and at that time, the members of the committee were 76. Which means that in 5 years we have been able to increase the number of members of about 25%, a little bit less. Well, this is a clear sign that there are a lot of countries more and more understanding the importance of space and understanding the fact that they need to be part of the family in order really to help their own companies and their own new players to approach space with a responsible behavior, which is what I was mentioning before. Why this is so important? Because you see a lot of new governments, okay, all governments, all spacefaring countries really working a lot in the space field, but also a lot of new governments. But at the same time, there is this, let's say, commercial market flourishing. And so if we want really to develop what we call a space economy, we do need to maintain a safe, secure, and sustainable environment for now and for generations to come. So how we do that? We really try to support a transparent and really trustful environment. For example, we maintain the register of all the objects launched into outer space, which is a sort of a transparency and confidence building tool, so that we also encourage all member states to register their satellites, to present what they do, to report on their commitment vis-à-vis the guidelines on the long-term sustainability, so that all member states in the world know each other and know the respective programs. It's a good tool, I would say, to try to maintain the peaceful uses.
Your Excellency, if I may just change the subject slightly, you mentioned in your presentation the Arab Space Cooperation Group, and I know that you met with this group yesterday.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what the outcomes of that meeting were?
Well, actually, the group was initiated early this year in March with 11 countries. Now we have 13 countries. They want to, 2 more countries want to join. We have annual meeting. Typically, we meet twice or once a year. This is our second meeting. We just try to put, the basis and the roadmap for the working group. We have been, visiting different Arab countries. We work with them closely, sharing our humble knowledge and capabilities to help them to establish their space program. We work with Saudi Arabia, and they recently established space agency. With Bahrain, they established their own space agency. Egypt recently, they established their space agency. My team was there in Cairo for before 1 month, spending a week, not a week, but probably 3 days, sharing with them our experience, because we have been through this before. And we do believe that we have a moral obligation, and of course, our leadership interested to share UAE successful story, not just only in space, but in different sector to the Arab world. As Her Excellency mentioned in that last quote, the more space players in the region, the better, the benefits, and also, it will, everybody will get benefit, not just only on the local level, but also on the regional and even internationally. So this group will grow. More countries are expressing their interest to join. Now we are expanding, the function of the group. Building the satellite in UAE, have a platform that bring the whole group together, because a group without or cooperation without projects is almost nothing. So UAE decided to put a project for this group to work, to engage, to network, and also to bring the culture of working. I think the future is bright. There are some challenges and difficulties. Priorities are different from country to country. But I think UAE is helping funding the satellite, but also funding the secretary of the group. We are dedicating a team and also place here in UAE in our space agency dedicated for the Arab space cooperation.
And one of the challenges mentioned in a couple of the presentations today was space debris. So now that there's so much international activity in space, what are the concerns regarding pollution in space?
Well, I'll start off. I'm sure you're going to take the leadership on this. But, I mean, having been the CEO of a satellite company, understanding the regulatory process in the U.S., it's a significant process, but it should be. And I draw the parallel to now that we're talking about sustainability on Earth. Why, at least from my perspective, being a U.S. citizen, is we've been a little late to this call. And we have done some significant harm to our planet. Are we going to wait until we're doing harm in outer space to make this a call? And cleaning up outer space is far more difficult, I would argue, than cleaning up what we have here at home. So I think it is of paramount importance that we have a global policy network to deal with the issue.
Ms. DePippa, you're nodding your head in agreement. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, absolutely. I would like to add that what I mentioned before, so the flourishing of the commercial market in space is one of the key elements right now. Because the point is that you heard for sure about a lot of mega constellations, so thousands of satellites, which should be launched in the next, really in the near future, which have been approved, by the way, by the US administration already, so they are ready to go in a way. And what we see is that there is a bit of mismatch between the speed of the commercial sector and the speed of the international community to, let's say, to be in line or to be able to provide the regulatory framework that I have to tell you the commercial market is really desperately looking for. So they really, they want to work with us, and that's also the reason why recently we started to work more and more with the private sector, we as the Office for Outer Space Affairs, because having all the stakeholders at the same table helps in understanding each other and helps to create an ecosystem which can really go in the right direction.
And Your Excellency, I know that the UAE Space Agency is taking measures to support sustainability both on Earth and in space. Can you tell us a little bit about those measures?
We do believe that space can contribute to sustainability on Earth. So in this area, we are building a number of small satellites, but have some science. One satellite called Mezinsat will be launched next year. It's been developed in Khalifa University, and it will measure green gases, and this will bring some science. But also we are working on this Arab satellite, which is a hyperspectral satellite that will also benefit the region in terms of climate change, measurements, environment, and localized natural resources. This is how to use space to help sustainability on Earth. On space sustainability, we are working with Her Excellency an initiative that within UAE Space Agency, we try to build a center of excellence for space traffic management and also for space debris in terms of providing guidelines, awarenesses. We are also putting the regulations, local regulations and national regulations in our space law. For example, if an operator from UAE wants to send a satellite, he has to do his best measures in order to deorbit that satellite, not to add to the debris. We also try to engage internationally, try to promote awarenesses why space debris is a big challenge. So we are taking measures nationally, but also on the regional level. Space debris and space environmental regulations is one topic of the Arab Space Cooperation, because now they are designing their space laws and space strategies. So we try to share with them our experience, but also try to encourage them to consider, space debris and taking, some measures that can help to reduce that problem.
Thank you. We do have a question from the floor. This gentleman. Would you please introduce yourself, sir?
Thank you very much. I am Dr. Azam Kayase. I'm living in UAE since 40 years. I am gastroenterologist and I'm working on microbiome medicine. A human being is 1% human gene and 99% microbiome. Are you going to study the microbiome in space and in the Earth by your research?
So how will microbiology be studied in space?
Microbiome, the gene of the microbiota inside the body and outside the body.
How will microbiome be studied in space? Is that your question, sir? Yes, please go ahead.
Well, 2 years ago, we did scientific experiments where genes were sent to space.
Genes?
Genes. And this is where, we try to see the effects of microgravity on genes. That experiment returned to Earth and was studied and compared, and it was published as a part of the international scientific experiments. But I think it's there. Maybe you want to share? No?
Well, what I can add is that there are a lot of experiments which have been performed, that will be performed on both the International Space Station, which is there since 1998, and the upcoming China Space Station, which should be operational, I would say, 2022. Now, what we do, for example, to support top-level scientific research in space is to partner with spacefaring countries For example, we have a strong agreement with JAXA, the Japanese Space Exploration Agency, to utilize the Kibo module on the International Space Station. And we have also an agreement with CMSA, the China Manned Space Agency, to utilize the upcoming China Space Station. For example, in June this year, we announced 9 scientific experiments which have been selected by us, by the Office for Outer Space Affairs, but the offer of utilizing the China Space Station was done by the Chinese, which means that we help the scientists because what they offer is free launch, free operations on board, which means that for a scientist which has a good idea in whatever field you believe is proper, and it's the right place, I mean, microgravity condition is the right conditions in which you want to test your experiments, your ideas, well, this is an opportunity to access space in a let's say, more affordable manner. So my invitation is that you visit our website on a regular basis, and you can probably send your experiments through us on board the China Space Station on the International Space Station.
Thank you very much. Regarding Mr. Hazza, did you make any study before and after he come back regarding microbiome study?
I'm not sure exactly what do you mean by
microbiome, because we can take sample from
biology
saliva.
means, yes.
Can take sample from saliva or from the stool. There is study, and when he come back, we can take the same. We see what is the effect of the space on the human being as a microbiome space life.
Of course, you know, one of Hazza experiment that before he went to space, he was analyzed medically, and when he came back from space, he spent 2 weeks. They tried to see, you know, the difference on his body, including all the cells, you know, the genes and the tissues. And I think the result was announced that it will be in January. How is, you know, the microgravity effect on someone from this region? It's been studied before, like for European, for American, for Russian. But Hazza is the first one from this region with unique signature of, you know, genes and biology elements, and this will be published, I think, in January.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank our panelists for their fantastic presentations today and your excellent commentary. Thank you so much for being with us today. And thank you to our audience for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the session. Thank you. Your Excellency.